What's up, everyone? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the market moving forward as we just had AMD and Microsoft announce their earnings. Not to mention the fact that we have big earnings and big pieces of data for tomorrow with FOMC. Let me just mention that I am not a financial planner. Take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link. Deposit $100 and you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. Deposit $1,000 and you're guaranteed 15. And this offer ends very soon tomorrow, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, right now, the market is looking more bearish. QQQ is looking bearish. We're seeing SPY dipping in the after hours. The bears have the edge after the JOLTS jobs report that came out for today. I went over all of that in my earlier videos, but I just want to make it clear that after the data came out, the market ended up dumping, and that's continuing to be the trend right now. The bears have an edge, and that does increase the odds for more downside, especially going into tomorrow. But the question is, how will the catalysts that are coming out affect us? I want to talk about those first before I break down these charts for SPY, ES, Nvidia, and others. So just remember that right now we have AMD and Microsoft announcing their earnings. This is going to be very important for tomorrow. Microsoft is worth trillions of dollars. It's very, very huge as well. So this is not only massive, but it's going to cause an even more significant move for the markets than AMD. And then for tomorrow, before the market opens, we have Boeing announcing earnings, not to mention Meta and ARM after market close. So get ready for all of these. When it comes to AMD, I just want to mention that AMD is once again seeing its data center sales more than double in one single year. It sold over $1 billion of its AI chips, and we saw its data center category rise over 115% on an annual basis. That's actually very important. I want to note that earnings per share is currently at 69 cents and revenues at $5.83 billion. That's also above expectations. On top of this, with their forecast, we're looking at $6.7 billion in sales being expected for the current quarter. That's above what Wall Street was expecting. That is bullish news as net income is increasing too. So bullish, good guidance, good growth. Their AI sales are looking good. And this is why the share price is up for AMD, up 7% right now. However, Microsoft is not doing too well, unfortunately. They had pretty good earnings, but their cloud revenue is not looking as good. This ended up missing and overshadowed their overall earnings because cloud is very important for revenue, not to mention AI. So revenue is up 15% for the year, which is not bad. EPS was a beat at $2.95. Revenues a beat at $64.73 billion, above expectations. However, the shares are still down 6 to 7% right now because of the fact that their overall top segments are not looking as great. So Intelligent Cloud, I think, was decent, but their cloud business as a whole is not doing as well. This is not very good because this is what Wall Street looks at when they look at competition, like for Amazon Web Services and Google for AI workloads. So that's actually a little bit of weakness that's being shown that's causing the share price to dip. That's why Microsoft is down. It's down 6% right now, continuing to fall. So we'll have to see how things go. So that's it for earnings right now. Let me just make it very clear that since AMD is doing well, a lot of semiconductors may do a little bit better tomorrow. But Microsoft is, a big tech stock. It's one of the Magnificent Seven. This is going to lead to some downside if it continues to dip, and so far it's dipping quite a bit. That could slow things down for the overall market. So we have another bearish catalyst. Now, whether or not that causes a big move in the morning, it is a strong possibility. It might cause more downside, but there's no guarantee that downside will last for the entire day because it also depends on something else. Tomorrow, we also have the FOMC meeting. What's going to happen first is at 9:45 a.m. we have the Chicago PMI tomorrow. Tomorrow is once again Wednesday, July 31st, the last day of July as well. That's very important. And then after the PMI report, which is very minor, there's not really much coming out. The market may slow down a bit in terms of volume, and then things will go absolutely berserk starting at 2 o'clock p.m. At 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the interest rate hike decision coming out. We're expecting that to be the same. And then at 2:30 p.m., we have the press conference with Jerome Powell giving his speech. When Powell opens his mouth, the market's going to go bananas. So get ready for all of that. Let me just note the reason why this is important is for the decision, it's not going to cause much of a crazy move. We know the Fed is going to likely keep rates the same. There's a 95.9% chance the Fed will do that for July. But for September, the question is, will we get a cut from the Fed? Is the Fed going to confirm some kind of cut? The market's expecting that. The market thinks there's an 86.8% chance the Fed cuts by September, at least one time by 25 basis points. Now, if Jerome Powell, so the main move is going to come at 2:30 tomorrow. If Jerome Powell confirms that a cut is coming, progress is being made, the market's going to bounce. We're going to be looking for a very, very nice bounce. If it's the opposite, if Jerome Powell ends up saying something like, oh, there's not enough data for them to do that. They're not sure if they're going to cut. There's no confirmation. The market might end up kind of panicking. We could even see some downside. So it all depends on what Jerome Powell says. Everything will continue in his hands starting on Wednesday during the press conference. The market is fearful. We're seeing fear making up the majority of sentiments. Momentum is slowing down to neutral as we're approaching the 125 daily moving average. The puts and call option positioning is going up as we're seeing more puts being bought. That's the 5-day average. So we're still seeing shorts entering. And the VIX is continuing to bounce above its 50 daily moving average. So we're seeing more shorts piling in. So the question is, what's happening now for the markets? Right now, SPY is looking bearish. It's actually a bit of a downtrend that's being respected right here. If you look at this, is making lower highs and lower lows continuing to fall. But I'm going to be looking at this key support at this 540 area. If SPY does not hold this, I think there's a risk of us dipping all the way down towards not just 538, but even 536. The 536s could be coming if we end up getting this rejection. So watch for that, guys. I see a big risk with that in my personal opinion. So 536 is a strong possibility for tomorrow. SPY is looking a little bit more bearish, especially after Microsoft is dipping. We might continue to dip a little bit, kind of pop and then dip. And then we'll see what kind of reaction we get. If we break past 542, we could be looking for 544. If we lose 540, which we're currently just barely holding, 538 should be coming, the low from today, not to mention the 536 area. That's actually a very, very critical support. I went over that in a previous video. I'm not going to go over that right now. But 536 is going to be a key level. SPY could be testing that as soon as tomorrow. So we'll see. There's going to likely be a little dip tomorrow. Expect potentially 538, if not 536. And then whether or not this continues depends on Jerome Powell. So it's all going to depend on him after that. That's why it's a very, very big day. ES has this bearish trend. Let me show you this. We have this white trend line, rejection, rejection, rejections. It just keeps on rejecting. So I think that this could be approaching the 5400 area or 5430 right over here. If this breaks, we'll continue to fall all the way down to the 5400s. This is looking bearish to me. ES is looking bearish. So is SPX. One thing worth noting is that SPX rejects off the trend line 1, 2, 3 times. And now we're continuing to fall. In my opinion, if we fail and we end up failing to hold above 5400, we'll be looking for another dip. It looks a little bit more bearish as well. The trend is still kind of weak, so keep that in the back of your mind. For Nvidia is looking a little strong. I think we might try to test at least 108, if not the 110s tomorrow, because AMD is bouncing. This is helping Nvidia, so look for a little rebound. But if we were to hypothetically lose 102, 104, then 102, we will turn very bearish and we'll be looking for 100 all over again. But this is favoring a push for at least 108 and eventually with the 110s. It looks a little bit more bullish from a technical standpoint. So look for a little push tomorrow morning, but then we have Jerome Powell later on, so we'll see if he helps us continue to push, if he gives us a rug pull later. But for the morning, it looks like it's going to push higher. Bitcoin also wants to push just a little bit. I think it's going to retest this 20 EMA at 66,400. But notice how we've been trending below this, so it might test this, and we'll see if it rejects or not. But for now, look for a little bit of a push, and then we'll see if it rejects. For others out there, we have Tesla, which is not looking too good. Tesla's looking a little bit more bearish, just kind of consolidating right over here. Look at resistance at 220. This 225 area is a key resistance. And we have support at 219. If 219 breaks, we'll be looking for 215. My gut tells me this might actually dip a little bit. We might see a little dip on Tesla to 219s, maybe a little bit lower. And we'll see if we get a bounce or not, depending on Jerome Powell. But I see a risk of downside after this red day that Tesla has gotten. So watch and see how well Tesla holds up here. There's a good chance it might dip a little bit lower to 219. If that breaks, we could dip a little bit more, and then we'll see how things go. There's a little bit of weakness developing on Tesla just temporarily, but then this could be affected by Jerome Powell. If we do dip a little bit, we'll see if Jerome Powell causes a big bounce to 225 or not. So be very, very patient with this. NQ is also kind of dipping a little bit. We actually broke our low, not looking too good. We lost 19,000. NQ is making a new low. We're potentially going to be retesting this low right here. I think 18,750 could be coming again. And it might continue to dip, guys. It's very, very sad. At least for the bulls, they were hoping that they would rebound. It's not really working. And this is also dragging our QQQ down a little bit lower. I'll be looking at support at the 454 area, 455.5 and 454. I have resistance at 457, not to mention 459. So I see a little bit of a downtrend that's being respected here. We got a nice rejection. We've been dipping quite a bit, and I see a risk of us dipping even lower. If we were to lose 454, I'll be looking for 452.5 to eventually 450. So I see a risk of some downside on the QQQ, so watch for that very carefully. For Aapl. Apple's kind of trading sideways right now. It's completely stuck within this range. It's just range bound, and I think it's going to likely continue this way. I think it might dip a little bit to about this 216 area where this imbalance is right here, and then it might just continue to consolidate. And then the big move will come depending on Jerome Powell. Will he pump us back up above 220, or will we get a rug pull? It depends on what Jerome Powell says. For Palantir, we're looking a little bit more bearish right here. We have a bearish looking structure. This is actually continuing to dip right now. It's also dipping a little bit in the after hours because of Microsoft's earnings. So it's having a very, very profound effect on the markets, at least right now. So I presume that Palantir may continue to cause this dip. We have a head and shoulders, and the full measured move takes us all the way down towards like the 25.5 area. So this favors move back down to 25.5 as the most likely possibility. Supermicro is looking a little bit more bearish. We're currently at, I'm sorry, it's looking like it wants to bounce a little bit. The trend is bearish. This bigger trend is more bearish looking, but what's good about this is the fact that we're actually holding onto our key support. So I think what's going to happen is this, okay? The downtrend is still there on Supermicro. This has been dipping and dipping, but it's going to rebound a little bit thanks to AMD. Might see a temporary rebound. That does not mean it's going to turn bullish. It's just a temporary little rebound. I think we're going to be testing 684 tomorrow. And if that breaks, we'll be looking for basically 700 essentially. I think 700 could be coming. March 684, then potentially 700 for a temporary rebound. But then we'll see if we get a big rejection off 700 or not. I'll be waiting for that very carefully. For Rivian, on the 1 hour time frame, we're just kind of choppy. We're actually on a bit of a downtrend right over here. So I think that there's a risk of Rivian dipping back down over here towards this 16 area. And then if that fails us, the 15.5 area is coming next. The 4 hour time frame is looking a little bit weak right now, especially for this trend as we're making lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, and this could continue to fall to this imbalance all the way down to 15.8. So I think that this is favoring downside just a little bit more, and we might dip a little bit more on Rivian. Whether or not this gets a bounce depends on what we end up hearing from Jerome Powell. So we'll see, but I do anticipate a little bit of downside. For SoFi, we had decent earnings, but now it's kind of flat. Unfortunately, we grabbed liquidity for a bounce towards almost 8 and only to come back down. This trend has a possible inverse head and shoulders, but for the short term, I do see a risk of this kind of dipping a little bit because when you look at this on the 4 hour, we're not doing the best of jobs at holding up. So look for a little retest of about the 7.28 area. And we'll see if we get a bounce off that. I think that this has a nice structure, but it might dip a bit and we'll see if we bounce off 7.28 or not. It might test that tomorrow and we'll have to see what kind of reaction we get. Now, there's some stocks out there which are showing some strength, such as the IWM. This has a possible cup and handle like structure on the 4 hour. It's a possibility. It looks a little bit more bullish. Tomorrow it looks like it might be trying to push up towards 223.35, then eventually 224. That's assuming we hold 222, though. If we lose 222, we could be dipping back down to 220. But because we're holding above this favors 223.35, then 225. It's a good chance AMD tries to rebound, in my opinion, but this also depends on other factors. So tomorrow morning, look for that rebound towards the 223.35 area, and we'll see how things go. Don't forget that there's going to be a big reaction to Jerome Powell. Whatever Jerome Powell says will have a big effect on this too. But this looks like it's a little bit more bullish as outperforming the market. AMD's on fire right now. It's up about 7%. We have 151.6 as resistance. If that breaks, 160 is coming. If not, look at 143 as key support. As of right now, we're looking bullish. It looks like it wants to push higher. It looks like it wants to be retesting 151. I'm liking this trend. It looks like it has a nice bounce coming. So far, so good. ARM has earnings for tomorrow. It's actually on a bit of a downtrend. It actually lost support at this 140 area. So just to clarify, we actually have a risk of potentially dipping back down towards 124.5 and eventually 130. So I think 130 and 124 are two supports. We could dip a little bit lower. My gut tells me that as we're looking at AMD rebounding, this might rebound just a little bit. Could see a little rebound to about 138, but then we could reject later on. The trend is still bearish. Look for a temporary rebound and a big reaction after that. For Coinbase, I just wanted to mention that coin is looking a little bit bearish. Looking at the 4 hour, we had a head and shoulders. We did try to rebound only to reject off our trend line, and we got this big move to the downside. A gap is still open to fill all the way down to 218, so I presume that coin will likely come down to fill it. It's possible we try to rebound a little bit tomorrow morning to retest this wick area, the 226 zone, but then we may continue to fall eventually to fill that gap towards 220 to 218. So I favor downside on Coinbase. I think it's looking more favorable to me. For Amazon has kind of like a head and shoulders like structure. It's looking kind of weak. So one thing you have to remember is that Microsoft is more impactful than AMD for the markets, and Microsoft has a ripple effect on the market. So we have a head and shoulders on Amazon. There's a risk of this dipping a little bit lower. It might try to retest 176.6 and then possibly reject and continue to fall. And I see a risk of it coming down towards 174, especially if Microsoft tips even more. So we'll see how well 174 holds. This head and shoulders finally played out for Microsoft and for Amazon. So it's looking a little bit more bearish to me. For Meta, there's a bit of a downtrend. We're making lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows on this dip. And I do see a risk of us dipping all the way down towards, let me just double check this. We could be dipping towards 444. We have this resistance around this 450 area, then eventually 452. And if 452 were to break, then we'd be looking at essentially like 460. But I just want to make it clear that Meta is looking a little bit more bearish. I think that this might continue to fall, and this could continue to dip all the way down here towards the mid 440s and eventually lower levels into the very low 440s. So I see a risk of downside towards 440. It's looking kind of weak to me on the 4 hours. This favors to move down. Thanks to Microsoft. So it is what it is, guys. Make sure you're prepared for this just to be safe. And we might dip temporarily, but then we'll see what Jerome Powell causes. Microsoft is down now like 6%, still not looking too good. We'll have to see if it could reclaim 400 or not, but it's continuing to fall. And an area of interest would be this low right here, all the way down towards, I think this is like 390. So it's still falling. It's dipping. Even as I speak right now, it's just dipping like crazy. It's looking bearish, guys. We'll have to see if this 388 to 390 area holds. I'm hoping it holds. If it doesn't, expect more downside. So I just want to give you guys a heads up about that. We're still looking bearish. We're barely holding on Microsoft. We're now down almost 7%. Not looking too good. Because of the fact that Microsoft has a ripple effect on the markets, now Alphabet is showing some weakness. So we have 172.5 as our 20 EMA. If we were to break that hypothetically, we have that imbalance to fill towards 174. If we fail to do so, we'd be dipping all the way down to 168. So it looks more bearish to me, so just be careful. GameStop is also looking bearish. For those who are interested, we're just collapsing. I did call out more downside. I think it's going to likely be continuing to dip. We'll see if 22.4 holds. If not, we could be tipping all the way down towards 21 flat. AMC is just kind of flat right now. I do think that this might dip a little bit if we fail to hold 5, so look for a little retest. For TJT, we called out 28 yesterday. That's where we currently are. It has to hold this, or else it's going to continue to dip all the way down towards 25. So we'll see if 28 holds to get back up to 30 or not. The VIX is still uptrending. It's making higher highs and higher lows. It made a lower high here, but we're going to be watching to see if this breaks out because there's no sign that the VIX is done with its run. It could still push higher if the market gets another rug pull. So we'll see. The market rebounded a little bit. That's why the VIX dipped and still at a lower high, but the high is not done yet. It's not like the move is done. This could still push higher and make a higher high, so we'll have to wait and see. The VIX is looking a little bit more bullish. The 10-year is going to make a big move tomorrow. It depends on what Jerome Powell says. And then the dollar has an inverse head and shoulders like structure. It came down a bit. We'll see if this continues to break. It depends if it can break past 104.7 or not. But the inverse head and shoulders is playing out so far. And if we end up breaking the resistance I called out, then that could be a bearish signal for the markets. So I just want to keep that in the back of your guys' minds. The market is showing weakness, so please be ready. There is a risk of some downside for SPY and the others for tomorrow, but there's a big but. We'll see what Jerome Powell causes. So maybe in the morning the market dips, but then we'll see if Jerome Powell causes a bounce or not. It all depends on what he says. And I personally can't predict exactly what words will come out of his mouth. We'll see if he confirms a cut for September or not. This could be a very, very important meeting. If he doesn't confirm it or doesn't give the market what it wants to hear, we're going to be expecting more downside. If not, the market could bounce. It all depends on Powell. So we'll see how things go. Tomorrow is a massive day, guys. Get ready, do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys then before the market opens. Have a great day, night, or evening, depending on where you are around the world. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for listening, and peace out.